The author, their inspirational brainwave, and the insatiable appetite of the reader come together on the book club, exploring classical literature, novels, academic prose, and poetry. The book club examines the true meaning behind the written word and the author's motivation.
Power is defined in many ways, not just hard power or soft power. You can talk about, in the book, I classify them in terms of 4 major categories: in relation to the mind, in relation to society, in relation to culture, and in relation to nature. So a comprehensive analysis of power.
Peter Baofu beats scholarly imagination. Baofu's works provide a visionary challenge to conventional wisdom in diverse disciplines ranging from social sciences, formal natural sciences, and the humanities. The Chinese-American author, who has lived in 75 countries across the world. Besides being a highly prolific writer, the professor is also a fervent intellect with immense mental capacities with a strong nomadic spirit. Baofu continually tours the world, delivering papers and interviews on his vast publications, exploring the postmodern, post-human, and contemporary paradigms shaping a new global order. The author was a U.S. Fulbright scholar. Baofu was also listed in the Writers' Directory in 2007. He has served as Professor of 100 academic theories in the social sciences and humanities. The author is a treasure for endeavors to understand our future, an evolution into a mostly uncertain period of massive global changes and shifting paradigms.
The author of more than 99 theories and 116 scholarly books, Chinese-American writer Peter Baofu easily jumps on the wagon for the most prolific and important writers of our time, with works that examine our past, present, and future, exploring the humanities, social and naturalistic order shaping the new world. The book club convenes with Peter Baofu, exploring our future and uncertain times, opening a new paradigm for humanity. Peter Baofu, thank you so much for joining us on the book club. Now you are the author of more than 100 scholarly books that explore our social, technological, and naturalistic order, the evolution of our times, theories that examine the very fact of our humanity. Tell us, who is Peter Baofu?
That is a very complicated issue. What I'm trying to do in my publications is to propose some new ideas in relation to the mind, nature, culture, and society, which means that it's very comprehensive visions of the future. I also, in that 101 theories that I have proposed so far, 2 of them are for the unified theories, not theory, but theories of everything. So in the case, let's say, just one example that you just mentioned before about modernity, for example, and now post-modernity, I propose a new vision, which I call after post-modernity. And in the case, let's say, of civilization, I propose that's what I call post-civilization. There's something about capitalism and democracy, which I predict we will not last, but it will be replaced by some new economic and political systems in the world. And we are in the process of entering them, but it will take some more time before we reach there, for example.
Fukuyama's End of Man, and a particular trajectory that comes to a close and a new one begins.
No, I disagree with that. That is a good example of the American ideology. Let's say in the US, where I'm from, the very idea that democracy and capitalism are the ultimate achievement of human history, of the human spirit. That's an ideology. A lot of people believe in that. And I think that's very dangerous. We are not at the end of it. Quite on the contrary, that is only beginning. The capitalistic and the democratic dimensions of our time, they are just the beginning of human achievement. We are far from over, far from the very end. We are just the beginning, and I'm proposing many of these visions in my books, including, in this case, post-democracy, post-capitalism. as the new eras in the future. Democracy and capitalism will not last. They are very dysfunctional and they can be very destructive too in many ways, but I talk about that in my publications.
What is their make in the realm of a new democracy, a post-democracy or a post-capitalism? How do they look? Would they be the same with the old paradigms left behind? Or are they paradigms that promise a better life for humanity?
Yeah, every time in human history when you have a new paradigm coming up, a new paradigm, by definition, is one which has some good opportunities and also some risks. In other words, they can be able to resolve some of the problems that the previous paradigm cannot overcome. But at the same time, they will create some new problems in the future, and then you have the next cycle of the new one coming up to replace another one again. The same thing about post-capitalism and post-democracy. Some of the many problems that we have nowadays, let's say in democracy and capitalism, they are very functional. They are very dysfunctional to the point that it is not able to resolve them. A good example, let's say in America, you talk about, let's say, post-gender, post-ethnicity, this kind of idea. But if you look at them more carefully, it doesn't work. Because it's some of the fundamental problems, what I call the conflicts within democracy, let's say between freedom and equality, and between different notions of freedom and different notions of equality. So such that you achieve one, you create some new problems on the other one. A good example is affirmative action program in the US, trying to address the issue of racism, for example, and inequality, and also sexism too. But in the process, it creates some new problems, what I call reverse sexism, reverse racism, reverse classism. Nowadays in the US, for example, if you criticize a black, if you criticize a woman, they will call you a racist and a sexist. Yes. That would be the end of the conversation. But some of the many problems that we are facing nowadays are the problems that the affirmative action program cannot overcome. In fact, they introduce some new problems. And that's exactly what I mean when I talk about the reverse sexism, reverse racism. There's a new form of racism nowadays, a new form of sexism, a new form of classism in America, for example, not just in America, also in all over the world.
Our post-humanity, when compared to our sketch on equal terms, on fair terms, like you said, it creates conflicts and problems that continue even when solutions are proffered. There are always problems that emerge to confound them. But does our movement into a new paradigm enable us to correct these inequalities, to create a fairer world?
The word post-human or post-humanity that I use, you have to be very careful, because I have 101 theories so far. One of them is what I call post-humanity. Now, do not confuse post-humanity versus post-humanism, something like that. All these are different concepts. The one that I have in mind is what I called post-humanity in the sense of the eventual extinction of the human race and the emergence of some new races, some new species to continue, not human civilization, but the civilization in the next stage. Now, this is very different from some of the people nowadays, especially in the post-modernist circle. Yes. They talk about post-humanism. I'm not talking about that. And they are criticizing humanism.
With our movement into a plethora of posts that predict our new turn.
See, a lot of discussion nowadays on post-humanism is contextualized within the discourse of democracy and capitalism. I mean, they capture the attention, they dominate the discourse. What I'm proposing is that we need to move beyond that, but we are moving beyond that, but very slowly. And what I call the post-humanity over here is that the discourse is going to transform itself, but it will get away from the domination of democracy and capitalism. There will be new ideologies coming up. And I have proposed many of them in my publications, and that's why I have 101 theories. Post-democracy, post-capitalism is just another one. Post-civilization is another one, but also Many other ones, let's say, authoritarian liberal democracy, there's another one. For example, hyper-empire is another one. This only in the social sciences and humanities, but I have also done the same thing in the natural sciences, in physics, in chemistry, in biology, in earth sciences, and also in, let's say, in psychology, in biology, and also in mathematics, in linguistics. I propose in all of them to see what this kind of post-humanity is going to be understood. Again, do not confuse that with the criticism against humanism. So what I'm proposing is very different from what everyone else is talking about when they use the same term.
Today, is the criticism of humanism relevant?
Yes, yes. In fact, sometimes that term is also used as a discourse in relation to transhumanism. Now, there's another term which I distance myself from because I also criticize transhumanism as a new technophilic ideology. So that one is also not workable in the longer term. So many of the visions that I'm talking about, they are far into the future, and they are very, very fundamental in challenging the very foundations of human values and beliefs in all dimensions, no matter what they are. That's why it takes more than 120 books.
Now, one of your books, very key publications, include The Future of Human Civilization. And I'm looking at what I like to call our uncertain times, when everything is fraught with uncertainty, and our future, our movement into the future itself happens blindfolded, when we are not absolutely concrete about a lot of things. It is happening amid a time when a lot of nomadism is happening, a lot of migration, a lot of movement. And this is causing friction and conflicts all over the world, sort of, between civilizations. Now, when you talk about the future of human civilization, how do you relate that to nomadism and our future beyond humanism?
We also have to be careful, too, about the term civilization. There's another debate, and nowadays, when I was at MIT and Harvard, one of my former professors, Samuel Huntington, talked about the crash of civilization. But remember, what I'm talking about is something else. I also disagree with that. I propose what I call post-civilization, which is something else altogether. Now, in relation to your question about the linkage between migration, nomadism, and all that, and the civilization issue in our time. Exactly. Many of the issues confronting, let's say, in this case, nomadism, migration, and all that, it's not just a question about civilization. It's more than just a question of civilization. It's more than just a question of culture. It's also a question of society. It's also a question of nature. It's also a question of the mind. So in my publications, when I talk about this issue, I'm trying to have a comprehensive analysis of all these multiple factors in understanding the conflict that we have in our time. At the beginning of your question, you talk about uncertainty. Okay, now, that is also a legacy, not just of the project of modernity, but it's also the project of post-modernity, because part of the project of modernity is to question tradition as dogmatic, as backward. That's why to be modern means to be non-traditional, to be non-dogmatic, to be progressive. But that ideology has been questioned, has been deconstructed in post-modernism. But then post-modernism too, I propose a new theory which I call after post-modernity and after post-modernism to transcend that further. So the very question of uncertainty that you are talking about is a question that I have indicated that this is also to be overcome. But that question of uncertainty is not necessarily bad. It's part of the understanding of the maturity of civilization to come to terms with some of these multiple conflicts that I have in mind. So that is very different from the modern thinking, or from the traditional thinking, or even from the post-modern thinking. So in the older days, for example, certainty was part of the human thinking. And that's why to be modern in that case is to anti-traditional, is to question the dogmaticness of the past, of tradition, which is very certain. But nowadays, we don't have that anymore. We question that, for example. That's why even in physics, you have classical mechanics. Yes, now you have quantum mechanics. You see, it's the same tendency in all areas of human knowledge that we are progressing toward that. Yes. But I'm also proposing that we need to transcend that too. So after postmodernity over here is to question the very dichotomy between certainty and uncertainty. So that is another vision that I have.
The book club, in association with Aba Bilingual Academy, teaching cognitive and affective skills.
This is the book club convening at this time here on GRTS. I am Ebrima Jatta. It is the platform where books come to life, and today we convene with legendary writer Peter Baofu, an academic scholar who has written more than 120 academic books. He is a U.S. Fulbright scholar with multitudes of degrees. Book club convenes with Peter Baofu, exploring the changing and shifting paradigms of our times. Welcome again on the book club. Now, tell me about knowledge itself and its particular station, a station that has not fully embraced the full convergence of humanity and has, from the beginnings of time, been quartered and stationed in particular points. How does this represent humanity?
This is a very interesting question from a different standpoint, and that's why one of the unified theories, not theory, but theories of everything that I'm proposing is what I call the sophisticated methodological holism, which is to understand knowledge and ideas, not just from the standpoint of one discipline, one profession, and all that, but to look into all of them. So this is not to deny methodological individualism, which I also introduce and incorporate too. So that is the era that I'm proposing is also where we are moving on. And that's why I have all these different theories in different domains of human knowledge, in the humanities, in the social sciences, in the natural sciences, in the formal sciences. The reason that I'm doing all this is to have a very unusual new kind of thinking, which is to look at issues from all dimensions of knowledge, so that you can understand the complexity of the problem. And this is the era which is different from the one that we now have. The one that we now have is the legacy of the modern project, which is professional specialization. So if you are a mathematician, you are a chemist, you are a biologist, I am proposing we are moving beyond that, because many of the problems that we are facing cannot be resolved just from the standpoint of one discipline. Now, in the modern time nowadays, in postmodernism, people are talking about interdisciplinary, multicultural projects. It is in name only. In many of those cases, they are not doing that. They are using that word as a label to make them look good. But what I'm proposing is something else, is that for any problem, in this case, for example, nowadays we have the climate change. For example, the U.S., for example, is trying to get out from that things, and under Trump, there's different things, but migration, immigration. Now, all of these problems cannot be resolved from the standpoint of one discipline of political science, sociology, economics. I'm saying that all of them need to be understood from the standpoint of totality. Even using physics, chemistry, biology to understand international relations. No one has talked about this before. Even talk about psychology from the standpoint, let's say, of space and time, or using mathematics to talk about cultural values, or using cultural values to talk about, let's say, sexuality. So what I'm proposing over here is that this kind of totality of the human mind has to be improved, but it cannot be improved within the domain of the human mind, because the human mind is limited. That's why I'm proposing the post-humanity is the post-human mind. The mind which transcending the human boundary that we are having right now. In fact, I am a founding father of different theories, but one of them is the founding father of the post-human mind now.
Thank you so much, Peter Baofu, moving beyond delimiting ideas and concepts for a world that is more open. Well, here is exactly where we draw the curtain on this edition of the book club with legendary Chinese-American author Peter Baofu. Until we meet again, bye, and enjoy the rest of our programs.